set.
Good morning. Welcome to Good News for today, December the 23rd. I'm Nikki,
And I'm Tim.
and we're going to be reading from Galations 3, verses 15 to 22. Paul wrote this, and I'm going to do the reading. Brothers and sisters, let me take an example from everyday life. Just as no one can set aside or add to a human covenant that has been duly established, so it is in this case. The promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. Scripture does not say and to seeds, meaning many people, but and to your seed, meaning one person who is Christ. What I mean is this: the law, introduced 430 years later, does not set aside the covenant previously established by God and thus do away with the promise. For if the inheritance depends on the law, then it no longer depends on the promise. But God, in his grace, gave it to Abraham through a promise. Why then was the law given at all? It was added because of transgressions until the seed to whom the promise referred had come. The law was given through angels and entrusted to a mediator. The mediator, however, implies more than one party, but God is one. Is the law therefore opposed to the promises of God? Absolutely not. For if a law has been given that could impart life, then righteousness would certainly have come by the law. But Scripture has locked up everything under the control of sin, so that what was promised, being given through faith in Jesus Christ, might be given to those who believe. Word of the Lord.
Yes, that's not actually part of our tradition, so we quite often forget to end in that with that. This is typical. This passage is typical of Paul in being quite logical, and that's true of most of the writings of Paul in the New Testament. And this chapter, or this book of Galatians, begins with Paul expressing his concern to the people in the church in Galatia that they were being led back to seeming to believe that they had to obey the law, that is the commands that were written down throughout the duration of the Jewish people's faith. And these laws were quite demanding. In fact, so demanding that it's basically was impossible to keep them. That's part of what he's saying here. But what he's really saying, he's sort of drawing a parallel with the legal notion of a will, and that you can't come along and change a will later on without, and especially 430 years later. The 430 years comes about because the promise that was made to Abraham, that his seed, and Paul points out that is singular, not plural, so it means a person, and that person is Christ. That happened. That promise was given 430 years before the law. The law was what was received by Moses and was written down over time in the books of books of Moses, which I think is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, if I'm not mistaken, and full of all kinds of rules that you had to obey, not just the Ten Commandments, but all kinds of other rules as well. So. This is our second take at this. The first take ran on to 11 minutes, and we thought that was too long. Mm-hmm. So I think we're just going to leave it at that, and we're going to finish off by wishing you a Merry Christmas, very Merry Christmas. Of course, this passage is an appropriate reading for this time of year because we are about to celebrate the birth of this very one who is the promised Messiah. Christ. And fortunately for us who are not of the Jewish tradition, elsewhere Paul has pointed out that the promise was made to that God would bless all nations through Abraham's seed. So fortunately for us, that includes us as well.
And the good news is really that it's not by works, not by following the law. It's by faith that we are saved. And not that we disregard the law, we try to follow it as best we can. And we do it out of gratitude for what Christ has done for us. And this is Jazz. Jazz
Yes,
wanted to be part of this
I
too.
thought that I should hold Jazz up and let you see so that you know where that moaning is coming from.
she wants to participate. So we wish you a very Merry Christmas and thanks for joining us today. Yes. God bless.
God bless you, and we'll see you next year, God willing.